Golden sunbeams sliced through the gap in Ash Ketchum's curtains, illuminating dust motes dancing above his Pokémon figurines. Ash's eyes snapped open, his heart already racing. Today wasn't just his 17th birthday. It was the day his Pokémon journey began. He bolted upright, fumbling for his alarm clock. A grin spread across his face as he realized he'd beaten it by a full 10 minutes. Bulbasaur, he whispered, the name, a promise on his lips. Ash's feet hit the cool floor, and he stretched, feeling the pull of lean muscles honed by years of physical preparation. His fingers grazed a well-worn strategy guide on his nightstand as he reached for his backpack. The mirror reflected a young man where a boy had once stood. Taller, with sharper features, but the same fire burning in his eyes. Ash adjusted his cap, smoothing down a stray lock of hair. "Ash! Breakfast!" His mother's voice drifted up the stairs, carrying the scent of pancakes. "Coming, Mom!" he called back, giving his room a final sweep. His gaze lingered on the poster of the Kanto region map, dotted with pushpins marking his planned route. With a deep breath, he shouldered his pack and thundered down the stairs. The streets of Pallet Town were quiet, the dawn chill nipping at Ash's heels as he jogged towards Professor Oak's lab. His breath came out in puffs of mist, matching the rhythm of his pounding heart. "Professor Oak!" Ash's voice echoed through the cavernous lab as he burst through the doors. The elderly professor emerged from behind a bank of softly beeping machines, his white lab coat swishing. "Ah, Ash! Bright and early, I see. Ready to meet your new partner?" Ash nodded, words momentarily failing him as the reality of the moment sank in. The lab doors swung open again, admitting Gary Oak, Richie, and Damien. Gary's trademark smirk was firmly in place as he sauntered in. "Well, look who decided to set an alarm for once," Gary drawled, eyeing Ash. Before Ash could retort, Professor Oak cleared his throat. "Now that you're all here, let's begin." With a flourish, the professor released 3 Pokémon from their balls. Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle materialized on the table, blinking in the sudden light. "Ash, as our early bird, you have first pick," Oak announced. Ash stepped forward, his eyes locked with Bulbasaur's. "I choose you, Bulbasaur," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. The grass-type Pokémon regarded Ash for a long moment before giving a small nod of approval. A warmth spread through Ash's chest at the silent acceptance. Gary, not to be outdone, quickly claimed Charmander. "Fire beats grass, Ashy boy. Hope you're ready to lose." As Oak turned to address Richie and Damien, a yellow blur streaked across the room. Pikachu, its cheeks sparking, leapt onto the table with a defiant, "Pika!" Oak chuckled, running a hand through his gray hair. "Ah, yes. This Pikachu has been spirited. It needs a trainer with a gentle touch." Richie's eyes lit up. "I'd be honored to partner with Pikachu, Professor." With Damien accepting Squirtle, Oak presented each trainer with a sleek red device. "The latest Rotom Dex, your digital companion and my eyes in the field." The weight of the Pokédex in Ash's hand matched the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He looked down at Bulbasaur, then back at the professor. "We won't let you down, sir." As the group stepped out into the morning sun, Gary's competitive spirit flared. "Hey Ash, how about we see who made the better choice? Battle me, right here, right now." Ash felt Bulbasaur tense beside him, ready for action. "You're on, Gary." Professor Oak raised an eyebrow but stepped back to give them space. "Very well. But remember, your Pokémon only knows basic moves at this stage." Richie and Damien formed a loose circle around the impromptu battlefield as Gary and Ash faced off, Pokéballs at the ready. "Go, Charmander," Gary called, his Pokéball arcing through the air. "Bulbasaur, I choose you," Ash countered, his partner leaping forward with a determined "Bulba." "Charmander, scratch attack," Gary commanded. Ash's mind raced. "Bulbasaur, hold your ground and tackle when Charmander gets close." Bulbasaur braced itself, leaves quivering as Charmander's claws raked across its side. With a grunt of effort, Bulbasaur surged forward, catching Charmander mid-swipe and sending it tumbling. "Nice one," Ash cheered. "Now keep up the pressure." The 2 Pokémon clashed again and again, each blow raising small clouds of dust from the ground. Sweat beaded on Ash's forehead as he watched Bulbasaur fight with everything it had. As the battle wore on, both Pokémon showed signs of fatigue. Charmander's tail flame flickered weakly, while Bulbasaur's movements became labored. It all came down to one final exchange. Charmander, everything you've got. Scratch, Gary shouted, his voice hoarse. Bulbasaur, wait for it. Now, tackle with all your strength, Ash countered, his heart in his throat. The two Pokémon collided in a flurry of claws and leaves. For a moment, they struggled against each other, evenly matched. Then, with a final surge of strength, Bulbasaur pushed through, sending Charmander sprawling. Charmander tried to rise, its legs shaking before collapsing in defeat. Charmander is unable to battle. Bulbasaur wins, Professor Oak announced, a note of surprise in his voice. Ash rushed forward, scooping Bulbasaur into his arms. You were incredible, Bulbasaur. I knew you could do it. Gary recalled Charmander, his expression a mix of disappointment and grudging respect. Don't get cocky, Ash. This is just the beginning. As Professor Oak tended to the exhausted Pokémon with potions, Ash felt a surge of excitement. His journey had barely begun, and he'd already tasted victory. With Bulbasaur by his side, he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path home seemed shorter, Ash's steps light with victory. Bulbasaur trotted beside him, head held high despite its fatigue. Mom, we're back, Ash called as he crossed the threshold, the familiar sense of home washing over him. Delia Ketchum appeared from the kitchen, flour dusting her apron. Her eyes widened at the sight of Bulbasaur. Oh, Ash, is this your new partner? She knelt, offering her hand to Bulbasaur. The Pokémon sniffed cautiously before nuzzling her palm with a soft Bulba. We just won our first battle, Mom, Ash burst out, unable to contain his excitement. Against Gary and his Charmander. Delia's face lit up with pride, but Ash didn't miss the flicker of worry in her eyes. She pulled him into a tight hug, her voice thick with emotion. My little boy, all grown up and winning Pokémon battles. Ash returned the embrace, suddenly aware of how much he'd missed these hugs. I'll be careful, Mom, I promise. Delia nodded, composing herself. Well, you can't start your big adventure on an empty stomach. I've packed you some food for the road. As Ash gathered his supplies, the weight of the moment settled over him. This was it, the true beginning of his journey. With one last hug and a final glance around his childhood home, Ash stepped out onto the porch, Bulbasaur at his side. I'm off, Mom, he called back, his voice catching slightly. Good luck, sweetie. I'll be cheering for you, Delia replied, waving as tears glistened in her eyes. Ash and Bulbasaur set out towards Route 1, the path ahead filled with promise and uncertainty in equal measure. The young trainer squared his shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The tall grass of Route 1 swayed in the breeze, concealing who-knew-what Pokémon and adventures. Ash knelt beside Bulbasaur, meeting its determined gaze. We've got to be smart about this, he said, scanning the route. There are a lot of flying types around here. Let's focus on training against Pokémon that don't have an advantage over you. Bulbasaur nodded, its red eyes showing understanding beyond words. As they made their way through the route, Ash's keen eyes darted from tree to tree, steering clear of the Pidgey and Spearow that fluttered overhead. Their caution paid off when they stumbled upon a group of Rattata foraging in a sun-dappled clearing. Perfect, Ash whispered, excitement coursing through him. Ready for some training, Bulbasaur? Bulba, came the enthusiastic reply. They approached carefully, but one of the Rattata spotted them, its whiskers twitching as it took a defensive stance. Okay, Bulbasaur, let's start with tackle, Ash commanded. Bulbasaur charged forward, leaves rustling as it struck the Rattata head-on. The wild Pokémon retaliated with a quick attack, its tiny paws a blur as they struck Bulbasaur's flank. Great job taking that hit, Ash encouraged. Now use tackle again, but try to predict where Rattata will dodge. As the battle progressed, Ash watched in amazement as Bulbasaur grew more adept at anticipating the Rattata's movements. The grass type began using its bulb for balance, executing quicker turns and more powerful tackles. After several rounds against different Rattata, Ash called for a break. He plopped down in the grass, Bulbasaur collapsing beside him, tired but proud. "You were amazing out there," Ash praised, offering Bulbasaur water and a Pokémon snack. He pulled out his Rotom Dex, fingers flying over the screen as he input data about their encounters. "We're off to a great start," Ash mused, glancing at Bulbasaur. "But we've got to keep pushing ourselves. Viridian City's waiting, and who knows what we'll face there." Bulbasaur responded with a determined "Bulba!" struggling to its feet despite its exhaustion. With renewed energy, Ash stood, adjusting his cap. "All right, let's keep moving. Viridian City, here we come."